He was one of the richest men who ever lived in the Roman Empire. He was also a Stoic philosopher who wrote, over and over, that wealth means nothing. Critics have called him a hypocrite for 2,000 years. They're missing the entire story, and the ending is far darker than they realize. His name was Lucius Annaeus Seneca, playwright-statesman, advisor to an emperor who would eventually order his death. By the time he died, he had survived exile, scandal, the murder of his colleagues, and the slow realization that the boy he'd spent years trying to shape into a wise ruler had become one of history's most notorious tyrants. This is that story, all of it, including the parts that don't fit neatly into a quote graphic. Seneca was born around 4 BC in Cordoba, in what is now southern Spain, into a wealthy equestrian family. His father, Seneca the Elder, was a famous teacher of rhetoric. Wealth and status were not something Seneca acquired later in life. They were his starting point. As a boy, he was taken to Rome, trained as an orator, and educated in philosophy at a school that blended Stoicism with an ascetic strain of Pythagorean thought. From the beginning, Seneca was taught two things simultaneously: how to argue with precision and how to live with restraint. He would spend the rest of his life failing to fully reconcile them. His early career moved quickly. He became a respected orator, then a senator, and then in 41 AD, everything collapsed. The Emperor Caligula, jealous, reportedly, of the sheer quality of a speech Seneca gave in the Senate, wanted him executed. One of Caligula's mistresses talked him out of it, arguing Seneca was already ill and would likely die soon regardless. He didn't die, but 4 years later, under Emperor Claudius, his luck ran out again. His early career moved quickly. He became a respected orator, then a senator, and then in 41 AD, everything collapsed. The Emperor Caligula, jealous, reportedly, of the sheer quality of a speech Seneca gave in the Senate, wanted him executed. One of Caligula's mistresses talked him out of it, arguing Seneca was already ill and would likely die soon regardless. He didn't die, but 4 years later, under Emperor Claudius, his luck ran out again. In 41 AD, Seneca was accused of adultery with Julia Livilla, the emperor's niece. The charge may have been political theater more than fact. Accusations like this were common tools for eliminating rivals in Claudian Rome. He was exiled to Corsica. He lost half his estate, and weeks before the exile began, his infant son died. He left Rome as a grieving father, stripped of half his wealth, sent to an island with nothing to do but think. 8 years on Corsica, no political power, no audience, no certainty he would ever return. And this is where Seneca became a writer in the way history remembers him. With nothing else available to him, he turned to philosophy, not as performance, but as the only tool he had left to process what had happened. He wrote his consolations during this period, including one addressed to his own grieving mother, comforting her for the loss of a son who was, in fact, still alive, but unreachable. Here's what's uncomfortable about this period, and what most retellings skip entirely. Seneca also wrote directly to the imperial family, pleading for his recall. His words about accepting fate with stoic calm sit right next to letters clearly designed to get him back into power. This is the first crack in the myth of Seneca as serene philosopher above worldly concern. He wanted back in, badly, and he said so. In 49 AD, it worked. Agrippina, Claudius's new wife and mother to a young boy named Nero, recalled Seneca to Rome. Not out of philosophical admiration, out of strategy. She wanted a distinguished literary tutor for her son, someone whose reputation would make her regime look cultured, and someone who, owing his recall entirely to her, would be loyal. Seneca became tutor to the future emperor of Rome. He was in his mid-40s. His exile was over. His real education and power was just beginning. When Claudius died in 54 AD and Nero took the throne at 17, Seneca became one of the two most powerful men in Rome, alongside Burrus, commander of the Praetorian Guard. Tacitus called them partners in power. For a few years, this partnership genuinely worked. Nero's first public address, drafted by Seneca, promised liberty for the Senate and restraint from the excesses of the previous reign. Rome, for a moment, seemed to be entering a golden age guided by philosophy, and it was during this period that Seneca became staggeringly wealthy. Properties at Baiae, an estate at Nomentum, an Alban villa, land holdings in Egypt. One ancient source, admittedly hostile and likely exaggerated, claimed he acquired 300 million sesterces through Nero's favor. Even accounting for bias in that number, the underlying reality is not disputed by historians. Seneca was one of the richest men in the empire he was advising. This is the accusation that has followed him for 2,000 years. The philosopher who wrote that, "A simple life is the best way to be happy, living in villas most Romans could never imagine." His critics at the time said it plainly. Publius Suilius Rufus, a political enemy, asked Roman elites a pointed public question. By what wisdom, by what philosophical maxim, does a man amass such wealth while advising others to want nothing? Seneca answered this accusation directly, in writing. Around this time he composed De Vita Beata, On the Happy Life, which contains an explicit defense of wealth on Stoic grounds. His argument, stripped to its core, Stoicism never taught that wealth was evil. It taught that wealth was indifferent, neither good nor bad in itself. What matters is not whether you have it, but whether you're enslaved to it. He wrote that the wise man does not love riches but prefers to have them. He doesn't admit them into his heart but into his house. He doesn't refuse what fortune gives him. He simply doesn't build his identity or his peace on top of it. This is a real philosophical distinction, and it is held up under scrutiny for 2,000 years. But it also happens to be exactly what a wealthy man under public pressure would say to justify his wealth. Both things can be true simultaneously. That tension is the whole story of Seneca. This is a real philosophical distinction, and it is held up under scrutiny for 2,000 years. But it also happens to be exactly what a wealthy man under public pressure would say to justify his wealth. Both things can be true simultaneously. That tension is the whole story of Seneca. Here's the psychological principle underneath this, and it's one you should recognize in your own life. It's called motivated reasoning. Human beings are extraordinarily skilled at constructing sound, logical arguments for the conclusions they already need to be true. The reasoning can be genuinely valid, the logic can hold up, while still being motivated. Seneca's defense of wealth is philosophically coherent. It is also unmistakably the argument of a man who needed one. The partnership between Seneca, Burrus, and a young, restrainable Nero did not last. As Nero grew older, he found the constant moral instruction suffocating. New advisors emerged, men who offered him indulgence instead of restraint. Chief among them, Poppaea, who would later push Nero toward the murder of his own mother and his wife. In 59 AD, Nero had his mother Agrippina killed. Seneca's response to this event has troubled historians for centuries, because there is evidence he may have helped draft the justification presented to the Senate afterward. Sit with that for a moment. The philosopher who wrote on mercy, an entire treatise urging Nero toward compassion and restraint, may have helped his student explain away his own mother's murder. This is not a minor footnote. This is the central, unresolved wound in Seneca's legacy. Historians still debate the extent of his involvement. What is not in dispute is that he stayed. He did not resign. He did not withdraw. Not yet. In 62 AD, Burrus died, possibly poisoned, though this too is disputed. Without his political counterweight, Seneca's influence collapsed almost overnight. New men, most notably Tigellinus, filled the vacuum with cruelty and flattery instead of philosophy. Seneca requested retirement. He even offered to return his wealth to Nero, a symbolic gesture of withdrawal from the very accusation that had followed him for years. Nero refused the offer, but allowed him to step back from public life. Why does this matter to you, watching this now, 2,000 years later? Because the psychological mechanism that kept Seneca inside a system he privately knew was rotting has a name, and it operates on you the exact same way it operated on him. It's called the sunk cost fallacy, combined with what behavioral economists call escalation of commitment. The longer you've invested in a position, a job, a relationship, an identity, a system, the harder it becomes to leave. regardless of how clearly you can see it's gone wrong. Not because leaving is impractical, because leaving would require admitting that years of your life were spent somewhere you shouldn't have been. The human brain will construct almost any justification to avoid that admission. Seneca had built 2 decades of prestige, wealth, and identity around his closeness to imperial power. Walking away meant admitting all of it had curdled. Seneca himself, ironically, wrote about this exact trap in his letters to Lucilius, describing how people cling to unhappy circumstances simply because change feels more frightening than familiar misery. He diagnosed the disease in others with startling clarity. He was significantly slower to recognize it in the mirror. This is not unusual. It is, in fact, the single most common finding across decades of research on self-perception. Insight into others' patterns is far easier to access than insight into our own. In 65 AD, a conspiracy to assassinate Nero was uncovered, the Pisonian conspiracy. Seneca's connection to it was tenuous at best. No clear evidence ever linked him directly to the plot. It didn't matter. Nero, increasingly paranoid and surrounded by men eager to eliminate his old tutor, ordered Seneca's death. Seneca is reported to have responded with a line that has survived as one of the starkest in Roman history. Given that Nero had already killed his own mother and brother, it was hardly surprising he would kill his tutor too. What followed is one of the most documented deaths in ancient literature, recorded by the historian Tacitus. Seneca opened his veins. The bleeding was slow. His age and thin frame were blamed. He took poison. It didn't work quickly enough either. Finally, he was carried into a warm bath where the steam ultimately suffocated him. Throughout, according to Tacitus, he dictated his final thoughts to a scribe and spoke with the friends gathered around him, composed, deliberate, unafraid. Tacitus's account is not a simple hero's ending, and Tacitus himself was ambivalent about Seneca throughout his writing. But the detail that cuts deepest is this. Seneca had reportedly specified, years earlier, while still at the height of his wealth and power, exactly how he wanted his body handled at death. No elaborate funeral rites. Simplicity. Even then, even amid everything, a man who spent his final years unable to fully resolve the contradiction between his wealth and his philosophy had apparently been quietly preparing for his own death the entire time. So was Seneca a hypocrite? The honest answer is more complicated than that word allows. Seneca was, unmistakably, someone who fell short of his own philosophy. Repeatedly, publicly, sometimes catastrophically. He also never claimed otherwise. In his letters, he explicitly describes himself as someone striving toward wisdom, not someone who had already arrived. This distinction matters more than it seems. The ancient Stoics divided humanity into 2 categories. The sage, a theoretical ideal of perfect wisdom that may never have actually existed in a single human being, and everyone else who is engaged in the ongoing imperfect practice of trying to become wiser. Seneca never claimed sagehood. He explicitly rejected the label. What he claimed was the effort, and the historical record shows a man whose effort was real, inconsistent, self-serving at times, and genuinely reflective at others, often within the same letter. Here's the part I think actually matters for you watching this today. The version of Seneca that gets flattened into hypocrite or sage in a thumbnail is not useful to you. Neither caricature teaches you anything about your own life. What's useful is this. A man can understand a truth completely, write about it with total clarity, teach it to others effectively, and still fail to fully live it. That gap is not evidence the truth is false. It's evidence that knowing and doing are 2 entirely different disciplines, and most of us are better at the first than the second. Seneca wrote in one of his letters to Lucilius that those who have learned how to die have unlearned how to be slaves, that the fear of death is the one chain that holds us all in bondage. Whatever else you conclude about his wealth, his politics, his complicity in things he should have refused, Seneca faced his own death exactly the way he spent decades telling other people to face theirs. Calm, prepared, without performance, and without collapse. Maybe that's the actual lesson. Not that Seneca was a fraud, not that he was a sage, but that a person can spend an entire life failing to fully practice what they believe, and still, when it finally mattered most, when there was no more time left to prepare, rise to meet it. The question isn't whether you'll live your philosophy perfectly. Almost no one does. The question is whether, when it counts, you'll have anything real to stand on at all. Seneca did. Even after everything, even at the end,